Better English Podcast.
Presented by Better English Lab.
I was looking at the corner of my bedroom this morning, Maya, and I realized something deeply embarrassing. I have a beautiful, shiny, very expensive acoustic guitar just sitting there, slowly collecting dust. It is honestly making me feel guilty every time I look at it.
Oh no! I remember exactly when you bought that guitar last year. You were so incredibly excited about it. You told me you were going to learn how to play all those romantic acoustic songs and entertain all of us by the campfire. You even bought a special stand for it. How many times did you actually sit down and practice?
If I am being completely honest with you and our listeners right now, I think I played it exactly 3 times. That is it. Just 3 times. My fingers started to hurt terribly from the strings. I could not figure out how to switch between chords fast enough, and I just immediately gave up. Now, it is basically just a very expensive piece of wooden furniture that I use to hang my jackets and shirts on.
Using a beautiful professional musical instrument as a clothing rack is definitely the absolute peak of adult hobbies. We love the idea of doing something new, but we hate the actual learning process. Hello, English learners, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Better English Lab. I am Maya.
And I am Leo, the guy with the dusty guitar and the sore fingers. Today, we have a really fun, lighthearted, and relatable topic for you. We're talking all about hobbies. We're going to discuss the things we love doing in our free time, the passions we pursue, and of course, the funny things we try once, spend way too much money on buying all the equipment for, and then immediately quit forever.
It is such a great topic because finding a hobby as a busy adult can be surprisingly complicated and hilarious. Sometimes we just don't know what we actually like to do anymore. But before we get into the details of our own funny stories, we want to remind you of the golden rule here in the lab.
Yes, the most important rule of the Better English Lab is to simply relax your mind. Learning English should never feel like a stressful, frustrating hobby that makes you want to quit on the first day. We want this podcast to be the easiest, most enjoyable part of your day. So please, do not stress about understanding every single grammar rule we use today. Do not pause the video every 5 seconds to open your dictionary and translate every unfamiliar word you hear.
Exactly. Just treat this episode like you are sitting in a cozy, comfortable cafe with two good friends. Go grab a warm cup of coffee or tea, maybe a nice snack, get comfortable in your chair, and just let the natural flow of the English language surround you. If you miss a word or a sentence, it is completely fine. The context of our conversation will help you understand the bigger picture. You're absorbing the language naturally just by listening.
And we're actually going to make it even easier for you today. You do not even need to take notes during our chat. If you stick around until the very end of this episode, we will have our special lab results segment. We'll go back and carefully review all the most useful vocabulary, idioms, and phrases about hobbies so you can confidently use them in your own daily conversations.
We absolutely love making these conversational lessons for you. So if you're enjoying this safe space to practice your English listening skills, please take 1 second right now to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and give this video a big like. It really helps our channel grow and reach more learners around the world just like you.
And we also want to start a conversation with you right now in the comments below. I really need to know that I'm not the only person who makes impulsive decisions. Tell us the truth. What is a hobby that you tried once, spent way too much money buying all the equipment for, and then completely abandoned after a week? Please share your funny stories in the comments so I feel a little less guilty about my guitar.
I can't wait to read those comments. I'm sure there are plenty of expensive running shoes, yoga mats, and painting kits hiding in people's closets right now. So, Leo, let's talk about your history with hobbies, because that guitar is definitely not the first time this has happened, is it?
Okay. You really do not have to expose all of my embarrassing secrets in front of the whole internet. But yes, I admit it, you are completely right. The acoustic guitar is definitely not my first abandoned project. I have a very long, highly documented history of being what I like to call a hobby hopper. I jump from one intensive session to the next with alarming speed. I get incredibly excited about something for exactly 1 week, buy all the equipment, and then I completely lose interest.
A hobby hopper. That is the absolute perfect title for you. Let's take a little walk down memory lane for a second, shall we? Because your history is truly hilarious. Do you remember your intense baking phase a couple of years ago? The famous sourdough bread incident?
Please do not remind me of the sourdough bread. Yes, during that time when everyone was staying at home, I decided I was going to become a master artisan baker. I watched 3 short videos online and suddenly thought I was a professional French chef. I bought massive bags of special organic flour, a digital kitchen scale, expensive proving baskets, and a special curved knife just to cut the top of the dough. I spent a small fortune on premium baking supplies.
And you grew that little jar of yeast in your kitchen. You even gave it a name, didn't you?
I named him Doughy, and I fed him flour and water every single day like a little pet. But after exactly 1 week, I realized that baking real bread takes hours and hours of waiting. The entire kitchen was covered in white flour, my hands were incredibly sticky, and the one single loaf of bread I actually managed to bake came out of the oven feeling as heavy and hard as a concrete brick. I nearly broke my tooth trying to eat it. That was the official end of my baking career.
Well, you certainly love to take up new things. Take up is a fantastic phrasal verb for our listeners to learn right now. To take up a hobby means to start doing a new activity, practice, or interest for the very first time. You usually take up a hobby because you want to learn a new skill or just fill your free time. For example, you can say, I decided to take up tennis.
Yes, I am an absolute expert at taking up new hobbies. I take them up, and then I put them right back down. Like my knitting phase. Do you remember when I took up knitting because I wanted to make my own warm winter scarves?
How could I forget? You bought a huge bag full of the softest, most expensive blue wool and those gigantic wooden knitting needles. You sat on the sofa for 3 hours trying to make a beautiful scarf, and you ended up with something that looked like a very confusing, tangled fishing net.
Hey, knitting is mathematically very difficult. You drop one loop and the whole thing is ruined. But it's not just indoor hobbies. I also take up outdoor hobbies. Remember last summer when I decided I was going to become a serious, adventurous mountain hiker? I went to the premium sports store and bought a pair of professional, waterproof, extreme weather hiking boots. They were incredibly heavy, they looked super cool, and they cost me half of my monthly salary.
Right, the famous hiking boots. And how many steep mountains have those expensive boots actually climbed, Leo?
0 mountains. I wore them exactly one time. I wore them to walk to the local supermarket to buy some milk because it was raining outside and I did not want my socks to get wet. They are now sitting in the bottom of my closet right next to the tangled knitting wool and the empty flower baskets. It seems like every new interest I have is just a passing fad.
A passing fad. That is such a great descriptive phrase for our listeners. A fad is a trend, an interest, or an activity that becomes very popular very quickly, but only lasts for a very short period of time before people completely lose interest. So, a passing fad is exactly what you described, a sudden obsession that quickly passes by and disappears.
Exactly. All my hobbies are passing fads. But I finally realized something deep about myself recently. I don't think I actually enjoy the hobbies themselves. I think I just fall in love with the fantasy of the hobby. When I bought the guitar, I wasn't buying a musical instrument. I was buying the fantasy of being a cool, relaxed musician. When I bought the heavy boots, I was buying the fantasy of being a rugged, outdoorsy guy who conquers nature.
That is a very deep and honest realization, Leo. And honestly, I think a lot of people do exactly the same thing. We buy the expensive equipment for the person we want to be, not for the person we actually are. We want the new identity, but we don't want to put in the hundreds of hours of practice.
You hit the nail on the head, Maya. We want the result without the process. But honestly, I think there is another huge reason why we constantly jump from one hobby to another, or why we feel so guilty when we quit. I think it is because as adults, We have completely forgotten how to just play and have fun.
Oh, I completely agree with you. We live in a world that is obsessed with productivity. Every single minute of our day has to be useful, educational, or profitable. If you cannot make money from it, or if it does not look absolutely perfect on social media, society tells us it is a waste of time.
Yes, exactly. The productivity trap. It is incredibly annoying. If you tell someone, hey, I started baking cakes on the weekend, the very first thing they say is, wow, you should start an online business and sell them. If you tell someone you like taking photos of birds in the park, they immediately say, you need to create a photography page and get paid for it.
Right. Everyone expects your joyful hobby to become a side hustle. Side hustle is a very modern and popular term. It refers to a piece of work or a small business that you do in addition to your primary full-time job, usually to make extra money. It's an extra hustle or job on the side.
And let me tell you, turning a hobby into a side hustle is the fastest way to completely destroy the joy of that hobby. Suddenly, you're not baking a cake because it's fun and relaxing for your brain. You're baking a cake because you have a paying customer, a strict deadline, and you're worried about your profit margins and bad online reviews. It just becomes a stressful second job.
We put so much unnecessary pressure on ourselves to monetize our joy. We feel like we are not allowed to just be bad at something. If I want to buy cheap watercolors and paint a picture of a flower that ends up looking like a muddy red puddle, I should be allowed to do that without someone telling me to open an art gallery.
A muddy red puddle. I would proudly hang that painting on my refrigerator. But you are completely right. We have lost the ability to just dabble in things purely for the sake of curiosity and fun.
Dabble in. That is a wonderful phrasal verb for our listeners. To dabble in something means to take part in an activity or an interest in a very casual, superficial way, without being very serious about it or committing a lot of time to it. You are just testing the water to see if it's fun.
Yes, I love the concept of dabbling. It removes all the heavy expectations. Looking back at my dusty guitar, maybe I shouldn't feel so guilty about it. I was just dabbling in music. I dabbled in baking. I dabbled in knitting. There is no law that says if you buy a guitar, you have to release a platinum-selling album. We are allowed to just dabble. Exactly. Dabbling is completely fine. It just means you're curious about the world. But while you are the master of dabbling and trying 100 different things, I am the complete opposite. When I find a hobby that I truly love, I become very loyal to it.
Oh, I know this. You are not a hobby hopper at all. You are a hobby loyalist. So let's talk about your obsessions. How do you manage to stick with one thing for so long without getting incredibly bored? What is your secret? Well, for me, my biggest hobby right now is gardening and taking care of my houseplants. I have a small indoor garden in my apartment. I really started to get into it about 3 years ago, when my regular job was becoming very overwhelming and stressful.
Get into. That is a very common and useful phrasal verb. To get into something means to become very interested in an activity, a subject, or a hobby. You start dedicating your time and focus to it. For example, you could say, I recently got into reading historical fiction books, or my brother got into photography last year.
Yes, I got completely into houseplants. And the reason I do not get bored of it is because this hobby gives my brain exactly what it needs: silence and slow progress. In our daily lives, everything is so incredibly fast. We send an email and expect a reply in 5 minutes. We scroll through hundreds of videos on our phones in just 1 hour. It is exhausting.
It really is. Our brains are constantly overstimulated by screens, bright lights, and notifications. So having a hobby that forces you to put down your phone must feel like a vacation for your mind.
It truly is. Plants do not care about your emails or your social media followers. When I'm watering my plants, cleaning their leaves, or touching the soil, I'm forced to slow down. I have to be patient because a plant takes months to grow a single new leaf. It's a very analog, quiet activity. For me, it is the absolute best way to blow off steam after a long, difficult day at the office.
Blow off steam. I really love that idiom. Imagine a classic train engine that is building up too much hot steam. It needs to release some of that pressure so it doesn't explode. When a person needs to blow off steam, it means they need to do something to get rid of their strong feelings of stress, anger, or frustration. They need to release the emotional pressure.
Exactly. Some people blow off steam by going to the gym and lifting heavy weights, or by going for a very fast run in the park. But I blow off steam by quietly watering my monsteras and my ferns. It resets my mind completely.
That sounds incredibly peaceful, Maya. It really does. But honestly, my brain is usually too tired for even that. Sometimes the only hobby I have enough energy for at the end of the week is doing absolutely nothing at all.
Doing absolutely nothing? I am not sure you can call doing nothing a real hobby, Leo. A hobby is supposed to be an activity.
Hey, I consider it a very important, highly skilled activity. My absolute favorite hobby on a Friday night is putting on my softest, most comfortable pajamas, lying completely flat on the sofa, and watching endless hours of Netflix. I am a true expert at it.
Watching television is definitely a great way to relax, but is it really a hobby? Usually, a traditional hobby involves creating something, learning a new skill, or physically moving your body. Staring at a screen is a completely passive activity.
I strongly disagree, Maya. It takes extreme dedication to sit in the exact same position for 6 hours just to finish an entire season of a television show. You have to ignore your phone, ignore the outside world, and just focus entirely on the story. Whenever I find a good mystery series, I love to just binge watch the whole thing.
Binge watch. That is a very popular and essential word nowadays, especially with streaming services. To binge watch means to watch many episodes of a television program, one after another, in a single sitting without stopping. The word binge generally means doing it too much of something in a very short amount of time.
Exactly. And when I am binge watching my favorite shows, I'm not trying to be productive. I'm not trying to learn a skill or start a business. I am intentionally turning my brain completely off. I just want to veg out.
Veg out. That is a very funny and very useful phrasal verb. To veg out actually comes from the word vegetable. When you veg out, it means you relax completely and do absolutely nothing that requires physical or mental effort. You're just sitting or lying there silently, almost like a vegetable in a garden.
Yes, being a human vegetable on my sofa is my ultimate goal after a stressful week of work. Think about it. We use our brains so much every single day at the office. We're constantly solving complex problems, answering difficult emails, and talking to people. So vegging out is my way of recovering. It's survival.
Okay, when you explain it like that, it actually makes a lot of sense. Giving yourself the permission to veg out and completely rest your tired mind is definitely important for adults. Even though I still personally think it is more of a rest activity than a traditional hobby, I agree that it is a very necessary part of modern life. Thank you. I knew I could convince you. But speaking of traditional hobbies, I recently realized that sometimes the absolute best hobbies are not new at all. Sometimes the best hobbies are the ones we used to do when we were kids, long before we even knew what stress was.
Oh, I love that idea so much. Childhood hobbies are so incredibly pure because kids do not care about being productive or making money. They just want to play. What kind of childhood hobbies are you talking about?
Things like building complex Lego castles, buying those adult coloring books, or even just playing old video games. Actually, I recently bought a retro gaming console just to play the exact same video games I used to play 20 years ago. When I play them now, there is no pressure to be a professional esports champion. It is just pure, simple, nostalgic joy.
That sounds incredible. You are healing your inner child. When I was a little girl, I used to love sketching and drawing. I would carry a small sketchbook and a pencil everywhere I went. But as I grew older and got busy with university and my career, I completely stopped doing it.
Have you ever tried to start drawing again, now that you have a little more stability as an adult?
I actually tried a few weeks ago. I bought a simple pencil and a fresh notebook. But let me tell you, my drawing skills were incredibly rusty. I tried to draw a picture of a beautiful, strong horse, and it honestly ended up looking like a very sick, confused dog.
Rusty. That is a brilliant word to use in this situation. Literally, the word rusty describes an old piece of metal, like an old bicycle that has turned brown and orange because it has been left in the rain. But when you say your skills or abilities are rusty, it means you're not as good at doing something as you used to be, simply because you haven't practiced it for a very long time.
Yes, I was extremely rusty. My hand felt stiff and awkward on the paper. But the amazing thing was, I did not care that the drawing was ugly. Just the physical feeling of holding the pencil and shading the paper brought back so many happy memories. It made me feel like a kid again.
That is the true magic of childhood hobbies, Leo. They never really leave you. They just sit quietly in the back of your mind, waiting for you to have some free time. You don't have to start from zero. You can always just pick up where you left off.
Pick up where you left off. That is our final and maybe most beautiful phrase for this main discussion. To pick up where you left off means to start doing something again from the exact point where you previously stopped. You are continuing the journey, even if there was a 10-year or 20-year break in the middle.
Exactly. So, whether you're buying expensive hiking boots that you never wear, peacefully watering your indoor plants, vegging out on the sofa, or drawing sick-looking dogs, just make sure you're having fun. Your hobbies belong to you and nobody else.
That is the perfect conclusion, Maya. Hobbies are just for you. Now, before we say goodbye to our amazing listeners today, we need to make sure they remember all of these fantastic new words. It's time to transition into everyone's favorite part of the show. Welcome to the lab results. This is definitely our favorite part of the show. We are going to go back through today's conversation and carefully review all the key vocabulary words, idioms, and phrasal verbs. We want you to be able to talk about your own hobbies confidently in English.
Let's begin with our first phrasal verb today, take up. This means to start doing a new activity, practice, or interest for the very first time. You are dedicating your free time to learn a new skill. Earlier, we talked about how Leo loves to take up new hobbies, like baking or knitting, even if he doesn't stick with them for very long.
Exactly. Here are two ways you can use it in your daily life. First, since I moved to an apartment near the ocean, I decided to take up surfing on the weekends. Second, my doctor told me I need to be more physically active, so I am going to take up cycling. Repeat after me. Take up.
Our second phrase is a passing fad. A fad is a trend that becomes very popular very quickly, but disappears just as fast. So a passing fad is an interest or obsession that you only care about for a very short period of time before moving on to the next exciting thing.
For example, you could say, I thought my teenage son really loved playing the guitar, but it turned out to be just a passing fad. Or, many modern diets that you see on social media are just passing fads that people forget about after a few months. Repeat after me. A passing fad.
Number 3 is a very modern vocabulary word, side hustle. This refers to a small business, a freelance job, or a piece of work that you do in addition to your regular full-time job. People usually start a side hustle to make extra money outside of normal office hours.
For example, she works as a high school teacher during the day, but she has a side hustle selling homemade jewelry online. Or, if you want to save extra money for a new car, starting a weekend side hustle is a brilliant idea. Repeat after me. Side hustle.
Our fourth phrase is dabble in. To dabble in something means to try an activity or an interest in a very casual, superficial way. You do not take it very seriously, and you are not committing a large amount of time or money to it. You're just playfully exploring.
Here's how you can use it. When I was in college, I used to dabble in photography, but I never became a professional. Or,
He likes to dabble in cooking Italian food whenever he has some free time on a Sunday afternoon. Repeat after me. Dabble in.
Number 5 is another great phrasal verb, get into. To get into something means to gradually become very interested in a topic, a hobby, or a specific activity. You start spending a lot of your time focusing on it and learning all about it.
For example, you can say, lately, I have really started to get into reading historical science fiction novels. Or, it is very easy to get into gardening because you really only need some soil and a few cheap seeds. Repeat after me. Get into.
Number 6 is a very visual idiom, blow off steam. This means to do a physical or mental activity that helps you get rid of strong feelings of stress, anger, or frustration. You're releasing the emotional pressure that is built up inside you after a hard day.
For example, after a terrible argument with his manager, he went to the gym to blow off steam. Or, playing loud rock music in my car is my absolute favorite way to blow off steam after a long day at the office. Repeat after me. Blow off steam.
Our 7th phrase is a funny one, veg out. This literally comes from the word vegetable. To veg out means to relax completely and do absolutely nothing that requires any physical or mental effort. You just sit or lie down comfortably, resting your tired brain.
Here's how you use it. I'm so completely exhausted from my business trip that I just want to veg out on the sofa all weekend. Or, sometimes the absolute best self-care is just vegging out and ignoring all of your emails. Repeat after me. Veg out.
Number 8 is a term we use a lot with modern streaming services, binge watch. To binge watch means to watch many episodes of a television show, one right after another, in a single sitting without stopping. You watch them continuously.
For example, we stayed awake until 3 in the morning because we decided to binge watch the entire new season of that crime show. Or, I like to save all the episodes so I can just binge watch them on my day off. Repeat after me. Binge watch.
Number 9 is the adjective rusty. While it literally describes old brown metal, when we use it for human skills, it means you are not as good at doing something as you used to be. Your ability has decreased simply because you haven't practiced it for a long time.
For example, I used to speak fluent French in high school, but my vocabulary is incredibly rusty now. Or, I haven't played the piano in 10 years, so my fingers are a little rusty. Repeat after me. Rusty.
And our final beautiful phrase is pick up where you left off. This means to start doing an activity again from the exact point where you previously stopped. You continue the process even if there was a very long break or pause in the middle.
For example, after my 6-month vacation, I returned to the office and just picked up where I left off. Or, we hadn't seen each other for 5 years, but we talked like we just picked up where we left off. Repeat after me. Pick up where you left off. Fantastic job, everyone. Those phrases are going to make it so much easier for you to talk about your own interests and passions with your English-speaking friends.
And before we let you go today, we just want to remind you one last time. Please do not put too much pressure on your hobbies. You do not need to turn your weekend baking into a stressful side hustle, and you do not need to climb a massive mountain just to prove you like being outside.
Exactly. Whether you are spending a little too much money on a passing fad, quietly watering your plants, or simply vegging out on the sofa in your pajamas, the only rule is that your hobby should bring you a little bit of peace and happiness.
If you enjoyed hanging out in the lab with us today, and if you learned something new, please hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a big thumbs up and share it with a friend who also has a closet full of abandoned hobby equipment.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. Keep practicing your listening, keep dabbling in new things, and keep getting better.
Have a fantastic week, everyone.
Better English every day.
See you next time. Bye.
Your English journey does not end here. If you want to keep improving and learn more everyday vocabulary, click on the video right here on your screen. We have selected another great episode just for you to keep your practice going.